Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom and welcome everybody. Thank you, Hillel, for bringing us a little Tracy Chapman in our morning. Been hearing a lot of her these past couple of weeks during this time of revolution. I know that a lot of us are here this morning to celebrate together with Jake Sugarman and with the family, and we're so looking forward to that. And first, some words of Torah, and then we will go into our Torah service and hear from you, Jake, and celebrate with your family. So I want to share with you that this morning when David and I went on our morning run, he was telling me about the novel that he's reading, which is kind of, he wants me to make it clear, his summer reading, not what he would read under typical times, though I can assure you that what you would imagine you'd find on David's Kindle versus on my book stand is exactly what you would find on David's Kindle versus my book stand. But he's reading this novel, and one of the stories in it, one of the narrative arcs, is a person who is searching for her love, for her beshert, her soulmate, and finally finds this person, but finds him on the day of his funeral, and realizes that she's just too late. And as he was sharing this narrative arc with me this morning, it struck me that is the narrative arc, one of the key themes in so much literature about love, in great literature and in beach literature, which can also be great sometimes, that so often the theme of a love story is not just about finding the right person, but about finding the right person in the right moment. And then it occurred to me that that's true not only for love, but that's also true for movements for social change, that it has to be not only the right idea, but it has to be the right idea in the right moment. And you know, there's that famous saying that there's nothing so powerful as a good idea whose time has come. And I think this idea goes so far back. It goes so far back even to our Torah. And let me explain to you what happens in Parshat Shlakh today, to just give you a little window into where we generate this idea that the timing matters and matters profoundly. So the people have left Egypt almost 2 years ago. They left this bitter enslavement, and they are standing on the cusp of the promised land. They're about to enter to take their own destiny into their own hands after hundreds of years of slavery and oppression. And spies are sent, leaders from all 12 of the tribes are sent out to cross the border into the promised land and to check it out and bring back a report. And when they come back, as you'll hear in a few moments, which Jake will share, 12 spies return. 10 of them share a report that's honest. They say that the land is beautiful, but it's treacherous. The people there are giants. The cities are fortified. We'll be outnumbered there. 2 of the spies, Caleb and Joshua, step forward and say to the people, it's okay. We can do it anyway. We can overcome that challenge. But the 10 spies are adamant. And I'm so struck by the language they use. They say, lo nuchal la'alot. We just can't go up. We just can't go up. The people are too big. The challenges are too great. It's too hard. It's not feasible. It's not possible. We will never win. And then Joshua tries to reassure the people. He says, Tova haaretz me'od me'od, but it's so good there. We can do it. Trust me. But look how compelling a message of despair and hopelessness is over a message of hope. Look how intoxicating it is. The people can't even hear Caleb and Joshua anymore. They become hysterical. They start to scream, better we should have died in Egypt. Let's go back to Egypt. Egypt, the place of their humiliation and their oppression, is better for them than the place of uncertainty and risk. Our rabbis say that the sin of the spies is actually twofold. One, that they didn't trust God. Instead, they believed that they would fail. But 2, that they convinced everyone else that now is not the time for radical change. Now is not the time to take a risk. We'll probably fail. They stole the people's hope. And when they did that, they stole their future. The next thing that happens is God says God wants to kill the people. God is so outraged that they have this lack of faith after everything they've experienced. And it seems to me that the Torah is teaching us that a person without hope is as good as dead. If you cannot imagine a better future, you will have no future. If you refuse to take a risk, You will inevitably fail, because to be alive is to be called into the unknown, to honor the creative, generative spirit that is the inheritance of every person born in God's own image, to know that we have to imagine and then embody our own future. As Reverend Michael Ray Matthews, my friend, said last night when he spoke at Ikar, he said, if you don't cultivate your own moral imagination, you are probably living inside someone else's. Indeed, says the Torah, when you fail to dream your own dream, you are stymied by someone else's narrative, by someone else's limitations. And in that moment when they're so stymied, so stuck by their lack of imagination, we learn that it's not only the ability to imagine, but the ability to imagine in the right moment that matters. Because what happens next? God punishes the people and says, now you're going to wander for 40 years in the desert. For every day that the spies were gone scouting out the land, you're going to get 1 year of punishment for it. And the people realize that they made a terrible mistake and they try to go back, but they're like that character in David's book. It's too late. They go to God and they beg God. They say, we're ready now. The exact inverse of the language that was used the day before. Lo nuchala lo, we can't go up now. They say, Hinani alinu, we will go. We want to go up. Let us go up. Let us go up. And God says, no, the window of opportunity has closed. You'll get another chance, but maybe 40 years from now, you'll get that chance. For now, go for a long walk in the desert, because things aren't going to change for you for a very long time. When you choose to live inside the limitations of someone else's imagination, you will never get to realize your own dream. You have to both imagine, and you have to imagine in the right time. I want to tell you that sometime in the last 2 weeks at one of the protests that I participated in on the street, I heard a speaker named Future, who's one of the leaders of Black Lives Matter here in Los Angeles. And Future got up and said the following: this moment is about imagination. Future said someone had to imagine that you could go to Africa, you could kidnap millions of human beings, shackle their bodies and carry them across oceans and enslave them to build a new economy in a new country. And that person had to believe that so strongly that that person was then able to convince millions of people that it was possible, and that became reality. So Future said, what can we imagine? Can we not imagine something better than what we've got now? And then believe that so strongly that we too can convince the world that such a thing is actually possible. I wonder what it takes to cultivate that kind of moral imagination again and again and again through all of the challenges and all of the obstacles that we face, so that when the right window of opportunity comes and change is actually possible, we will be able to step into that moment of opportunity. And to answer that question, our Parsha also offers a suggestion. The end of the Torah portion, chapter 15, verse 39, we hear the rules regarding the tzitzit, the fringes that we have on our talesim. And it says that you have to look at the fringes, and when you look at it, you will remember and then you'll act. So the question is, what are we looking at? What are we remembering? And what are we acting on? And the rabbis indicate that what we're looking at is not actually all of the tzitzit, it's only one of the strings. It's ptil tchelet. It's the one blue string, which many of us don't even have on our tzitzit. I don't know if any of you have a blue string on yours now, but after this reading, I'm gonna have to go get one. For years, I never have. But they say that what the mitzvah is actually telling us to do is not just to look generally at the tzitzit and remember the laws, but we have to look at the blue string. Why? Because it says in the Talmud that the color blue is the color of striving, because blue is the color of the sea and the sky. Blue is the color of expansiveness, because we live in constricting times in which we are compelled more and more and more to limit our imagination, to think only inside the boundaries of what other people have told us is possible. But when you look at the blue, you think about the sky and the ocean, and you think not about what is, but about what could be. And I believe that our tradition is trying to tell us that the force of our faith is to not to be imprisoned by the current reality, but instead to dream about the next reality and to keep that dream alive week after week, year after year, generation after generation, because one of these days, the window of opportunity will open and you will be given the chance to take a risk that will land you in the promised land. And if you choose not to take that risk, you could go back the next day and say, wait a minute, I missed it. I made a mistake, but it will be too late. We know that history lurches forward, that there are windows when change can happen and then they close again. And it seems in American history, those windows might be every 60, 70 years. How do you keep yourself awake and imaginative and dreaming and hopeful so that when that window comes, you know how to step into the time that you were born for? Things are happening right now in our country that none of us imagined would ever be possible. This past week, the Supreme Court of the United States passed a 6-3 decision protecting the LGBTQ community from discrimination at work. One of my friends wrote that day, "Tonight I go to bed in a country that honors my dignity and my humanity more so than the country that I woke up in this morning." In this moment, millions of people across the country and across the world are involved in a nonviolent revolutionary protest that I don't believe any of us imagined could be possible. In all 50 states, in 700 United States cities, in more than 17 countries around the world, people taking to the streets in the midst of a pandemic to protest in solidarity with Black lives, including a woman named Joyce Wagner, who you might have read about, a 96-year-old Auschwitz survivor who drove to a Black Lives Matter protest in Chicago and showed protesters the numbers tattooed on her arms outside the window of her car and spoke about the dangers of state-sponsored white supremacist violence, including in Crown Heights, New York, where this past week, hundreds of Haredi Jews gathered together to stand in solidarity, holding signs that said Black Lives Matter. Things are happening in this moment that none of us, as imaginative as we thought we were 3 months ago, 4 months ago, would have ever dreamt to be possible. Change comes at the confluence of the right idea and the right moment. And this, right now, what we're living in is the right moment. This is the right time. I can feel it in my body. It makes my hands shake to even talk about it. This is the moment. So the question is, how do we gather up the courage to step into the unknown? We have to remember that our goal right now is not just to survive this moment. Our goal is to build a just and equitable society in which God's presence is made manifest in this world because all human beings are able to live in dignity and in peace. Today, right now, all across the country, people are tuning in to the Poor People's Campaign, picking up the baton of Dr. Martin Luther King and stepping forward to fight against the modern day plagues of poverty, racism, ecological devastation, and a false moral narrative that has imprisoned our country since before its foundation. And here's what Bishop Barber, who leads this campaign, wrote just yesterday about Juneteenth, which we marked last night, and we will mark again this morning. "Some are calling for Juneteenth to be a national holiday," he said. "How about we go further than that? How about we pass healthcare and living wages for all? How about a fully restored Voting Rights Act and reparations? Please don't just ask for a holiday. Let's make it a holy day of repentance and reconstruction." It's impossible, the 10 spies would say. It's impossible. It's too dangerous. Healthcare for all, it's just not feasible. Living wage for all, you'll destroy industry. Voting protections, we'll never get those back. Reparations, it's much too complicated. And I'd like to add a radically reimagined approach to policing and community safety. It's impractical. It's dangerous. And yes, there will always be the temptation to say lo nuchal la'alot. It's not possible. We can't do it. It's not feasible. It's too dangerous. But we have to remember that the only way that anything ever changes is when someone imagines that change is possible, and that imagination meets the moment that it was born for. For us, that moment is now. We have to be brave, and we have to be visionary. We have to be generative. We have to be imaginative before this window closes, before this opportunity passes, because we cannot afford to wait another 40 years, another 60 years, until the opportunity presents itself again. And so I bless all of us on this Shabbat to dream our most bold and audacious dreams, to imagine the impossible, and then to believe in it so strongly that we're able to convince everyone around us that such a thing is possible. And then together to step through the window of possibility that this moment for some reason offers all of us, and actually birth the world that we know is waiting for us. Shabbat Shalom.